Hello, my curious beauty butterflies. Today's video is going to be a basics about foundation. So what I'm going to cover is the different types of foundation, different application tools, and also give you a demo on how to apply foundation. There's many different kinds of foundation, from liquids to creams to powders to even mousses and even creams that kind of turn into powder. But what I'm going to talk about is the three most common ones, which are liquid foundation, cream foundation, and powder foundation. So I have a sample of liquid foundation here. This is my number 7 Protect and Perfect foundation. And this is what a liquid foundation looks like. Liquid foundations are best for normal to dry skin or combination skin. So it obviously gives you also different coverages from sheer to light medium to very heavy. Most give you a dewy kind of finish to your skin. As you can see, this is in the light, this is going to give you a dewy finish. But there's also matte liquid foundations available as well. Now, then there's cream foundation, which is best for very dry to normal or combination skin. And I have a palette here of cream foundation, but I'm just going to take a little bit and put it next to my hand so you can see kind of the difference about the cream foundation. This gives you a pretty heavy coverage, especially if you layer it, but you can always thin it out with water if you want a light coverage. You can put, if you want a heavier coverage, you can layer it. So like put one layer and then more on top and more on top. Because it gives you heavy coverage, this is really good if you're a professional makeup artist to do photo shoots, and this is what I usually use when I'm doing a photo shoot. And it looks like it's not going to be very shiny. It has a tendency to get very dewy on the face. So it's very good to set it with powder. And next I'm going to talk to you about powder foundation. And this is best for oily skin, obviously, because the powder absorbs the oil on your skin. And this always gives you a very sheer coverage. What are the best application tools to use to put on foundation? Well, we have sponges, brushes, and fingers. Here I have an example of a sponge. And there's also beauty blenders, which I'll insert a picture of what that looks like. Sponges are good for cream and liquid foundation, but sponges tend to absorb the foundation, especially liquid, not so much cream, but liquid. So the best thing to do is to dip it in some water and squeeze out the excess water, and then put it in your foundation and use it on your face. When you use a sponge, you always want to do stippling motions. And the beauty blender is really good because it can get into the corners and the small spaces, but of course also this is good too. Then there's brushes, which is actually my favorite way of putting on foundation. I have several different kinds of brushes here. These are two stippling brushes. I have two different sizes. I like to use the small size because obviously it helps get into smaller areas, whereas this, it's kind of hard to do if you need like extra coverage around the nose. It's kind of hard to get really precise with a big brush. But this is best for liquid foundation. Doesn't really work with creams. Might work with powders, but a kabuki brush, something like this, would be better for a powder. So the way you do these also is using a stippling motion, which is why it's good for liquid. This is actually what I use for my liquid foundation because I find that it's easy to get in the corners and things that I need. And with this one, instead of doing long strokes because you don't want those brush strokes, I would do short strokes. So this is good for liquid, and it could also be good for cream. But an even better brush for cream would be a flat brush like this, because it's very dense and it'll pick up the cream, which also happens to be a very dense product, and it'll lay just on top of the brush and you'll be able to brush it in. And of course there's always your fingers, which is good for liquid and cream foundation. when I'm touching up things, I use my fingers. Some makeup artists prefer not to use their fingers just for sanitary purposes, but a lot of celebrity makeup artists still talk about how it's great to use your fingers. So it's really up to you. It's your face. You can do what you want. If you're doing someone else's face, I would suggest that you probably stick to a brush, even over a sponge, because brushes are easier to clean. Sponges, I have them in my makeup kit. I throw them away immediately after I use them. You don't want to use the same sponge when it's dirty because it's full of bacteria. Now I'm going to do a demo for you on how to apply, and I'm going to use my liquid foundation because that's what I use every day, so that's what's easier for me. So what you would need is first your foundation, and whatever tool you're going to use. In my case, it's going to be this. And you want some moisturizer. And of course, you can use a high-end moisturizer or a drugstore moisturizer. This, I believe, is only about $5. And you also want some setting powder, preferably translucent powder if you have light to medium skin. If you have darker skin that's kind of yellow based, then you could use like a banana powder. And I'll have a picture of what that looks like. And this is what I'm going to be using to set my foundation. Okay, so, and I want to talk about an extra, which is primer. The best thing about primers is that they help cream foundation move along the skin, because cream foundation tends to be stiff at first and then it warms up as it gets on the face, but that very first, when it first touches your skin and the primer's there, it really helps. And primer is good because it gives powder foundation something to stick to, and a lot of makeup kits that come with like your first ever powder, first ever mineral foundation, it comes with a primer. So primers are good just for that extra added step. I use primers when I'm doing a photo shoot for my models, just because I want to make it last as long as the shoot will last. And also, if you have a job that requires a lot of, I guess, just effort and perspiration, and your makeup tends to fade, then a primer is good for you to use. I already moisturized my face off camera, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to use a primer, but I'll put in a picture of a few primers that I usually use in my professional makeup kit. So I just need a few pumps of foundation. Of course, I might have more foundation later. And this is my sponge. Okay, so I like to just start kind of in the middle of the face and work my way out. But of course, this is completely optional. And I just tend to concentrate more foundation on the parts of my face that have a lot of redness, which would be like right here and around the nose. And around the mouth. Because you want to cancel out the redness around your mouth, especially if you're going to be putting on lipstick. Looks like I have a mustache. I'm going to use my mirror. You want to make sure you blend on the neck. Okay, I need more foundation. And I have to move my hair to the side. Okay, now because I like to create one even canvas, I put foundation on my eyelids as well. This is completely optional. It also works good as an eyeshadow primer. So again, primers tend to be really expensive, so this is good because it helps the eyeshadow have something to stick to. And also creates an even canvas for you to work on. I need more foundation than I thought. Don't start with too much on the hand anyways, because it's hard to put back. And I don't like to wash off tons of foundation off my hands because I feel like I'm wasting it. Now when I see a brush stroke, because I was making those big strokes, so when I see a brush stroke, I go back over and stipple it. But just to get it, you know, on my face, I might make large brush strokes, but you definitely don't want to leave it at that. You want it to look as much like your natural skin as possible. And this one I'm doing right here is called buffing. You really want to buff it into the neck. Also completely optional, putting some on your ears if you have really red ears. Again, that's completely optional. But I'm going to do it just because it seems like I have a weird stopping line right there. Okay. I could probably put more foundation on just to get better coverage, but for the purposes of this video, I think that's good enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it with powder. I have my translucent powder. And this, I just pick it up from, or put it on the back of my hand. Okay. And I wipe off, or I tap off the excess, because you want a very, very light layer of powder. And I stipple and buff, stipple and buff, but very, very light. It just takes away some of that shine without making it look caked. Alright, and there you go.